In the sunny but sometimes dangerous land of California, two brothers and two petitioners are tasked with transporting a batch of gemstones to a jewelry store owned by a man named Sammy Kassem. For Ali, this was the first time he had been involved in this kind of work, and his inexperience was evident in his unconcealed nervousness. Ben, noticing his brother's insecurity, asks if he has any self-defense gear with him. In a serious tone, he instructed Ali to get his ammunition ready and warned that in this industry, things can get complicated at any time. While the two brothers were talking, in another place in the city, a man named David started his working day. His goal was to find a man named Masood. David didn't believe it, and luckily, he had secretly attached a tracking device to the target's belongings beforehand. With the precision of a professional, he tracked down Masood and blocked the road with his car. David quickly transferred the gun, wasting no time, searched thoroughly to make sure Masood was unarmed, took his phone, and locked him in the trunk of his car. After getting the situation under control, David drove Masood's car away from the scene. Returning to the jewelry store, the atmosphere was extremely tense. Sammy, the store owner, hands Ben a suitcase that looks like it's filled with diamonds. However, in a private moment, the jeweler revealed to Ben the true nature of the mission. The suitcase only contained counterfeit goods that had no value. The real newspaper warehouse, a set of gems worth about $3 million, had to be shipped in secret. The order was clear. Ben had to hide the real gems in his clothes, specifically in his socks. Sammy insisted that Ben be forbidden to share this information with his inexperienced cousin. In addition, to increase security, he lent Ben his personal gun and said that a car would follow them closely throughout the journey to ensure safety. When Ben and Ollie set out on their way, they were unaware that David was already waiting outside the store, waiting for the right moment to follow. The journey continued until they reached a much more secluded and quiet area, away from the usual hustle and bustle. That's where David decided to take action. He covered his face with a hood so as not to be identified and drove straight into the brothers' car. He quickly stepped out of the car, holding a gun. Ollie was completely silent in fear, unable to react. He was alone, and someone was watching their every move from a distance. Without hesitation, he asked them to hand over the real gems and documents proving their value. Ben understands that he has no way out. In the end, he admitted that the real goods were hidden in his left sock. As it turned out, David had knocked out the man tasked with escorting them, who was locked in the car cup. Just as David was about to return to the car to escape, Ollie suddenly regained his composure, reached for his old gun, and opened fire. However, due to shaking his hand, the bullet missed and struck the glass behind the robber. David reacted with incredible agility, shifting into reverse gear and taking off at breakneck speed. He deftly wandered through alleys and avenues until he came to a high-rise parking lot. Once inside, the tension began to subside, and he realized that he had almost faced a tragic end. With his hands still trembling, he took off the contact lenses he used to change his appearance, washed his face through the speakers, covered the car he had used to commit the crime, and switched to a second getaway car, disappearing into the vast city without a trace. Elsewhere in the region, Sharon, an insurance expert, is visiting the grand mansion of a wealthy man named Monroy. She planned a high-end insurance policy. Suddenly, Monroy interrupts her technical explanation to ask if Sharon has ever had experience shooting a Glock pistol. Despite feeling lost and a little stressed, she accepted the challenge. After the incident, they returned to the mansion, where the landlord showed her multiple artworks totaling more than $6 million and demanded that each piece be duly included in the contract. Sharon returned to his professional role, explaining the benefits of additional insurance terms, even mentioning an option to protect his daughter during her college years. At that moment, a woman walked by the living room, and Sharon made the mistake of assuming that it was Monroy's daughter. He quickly corrected that it was Adrian, his future fiancée. At the end of the meeting, Sharon left feeling uncomfortable, seriously doubting her ability to close a contract with such a strange client. Meanwhile, police officers, Lou and his colleagues, are investigating the scene of the robbery that occurred near Highway 101. They interrogate Ben, pointing out the strangeness of the robbery happening correctly. On the same day, he brought a shipment worth millions of dollars. The detectives were particularly curious about the attacker's knowledge of Ben's wife's name. For his part, Ollie admitted to officers that he tried to defend himself by shooting. Although unsuccessful, investigators raise a key question. Why doesn't the criminal shoot the Patties when he gets a chance? Lou began to form a hypothesis. He was convinced that the incident was caused by a criminal he had been following for a long time. According to his profile, this is an expert in eavesdropping on other people's communications, always operating in the vicinity of Highway 101 and disappearing without a trace. His colleagues asked him to be cautious, reminding him that his crime-solving record was not the best and fearing that the police would not use the material for any further mistakes in the investigation. At the same time, David arrived at his hiding place. He exchanged the gems he had just stolen into a box. When he checked the hat he had used, he found small red droplets. A thought made him uneasy. It is very likely that he also left traces of his blood on the car left in the public parking lot. Saron, on the other hand, returns to work. Her colleague was curious about the outcome of the meeting with Monloy. She only replied that the client was considering the proposed fees. She took the opportunity to ask about the possibility of being promoted to a higher position. But Phil, one of the managers, responded vaguely, saying the final decision was up to his superiors and nothing was still certain. After the situation of the robbery has calmed down a bit, David arranges a meeting with the person responsible for consuming the high-level theft. This person asked him how it all happened. David admitted to having a bit of an obstacle with an armed young man, but assured that authorities did not intervene directly at the scene. Trung joked about the bad things about the change of seasons, but David seemed more worried about the future. They have another plan on the agenda in the Santa Barbara area. However, David expressed his displeasure that he had to face all the dangers while the others just sat in the office and benefited. What worries him most about the Santa Barbara plan is that it's intended to be done in broad daylight. His partner simply asks if he has a better solution, and David replies that he is considering options. The mention of a person named Jonathan suggests that there are more chess pieces moving on this crime chessboard. That same night, David decides to focus his attention on Sharon. He began to search deeply about her background and personal life. Meanwhile, at the insurance office, Sharon attends a briefing where she is assigned a new teammate, Melanie Edcard. Both have to be in charge of the clients with the greatest assets. Sharon shares the progress with Monroy's contract and the details of the wedding. But her boss, Larry, turns his attention to a pressing matter, a multi-million-dollar claim filed by jeweler Sammy Smith. The fact that the robbery coincided with the exact timing of the shipment of the real diamonds raises suspicions of internal fraud. Larry asks Sharon to use his relationship with the police department to conduct a lie check on both the gold shop owner and the carrier. In another office, Sammy faces questions from investigators about the incident. The jeweler was indignant at the officer's suspicions. He insisted that he did not speak to anyone on the phone with the shipment, and that the entire coordination was done via email. Coincidentally, at that very moment, David was paying a hacker to analyze Sharon's digital presence. His interest is not only in theft, but also in understanding how the insurance world works from within. Meanwhile, in another meeting, the man in charge of money met with a man named Omen to discuss the Santa Barbara case. When asked if he could take on the robbery, Omen replied that he was much more aggressive than David. A short time later, a serendipitous event occurred in David's life. During the red light, a woman named Maya rammed her car into his car. She stepped out of the car with a defensive and annoyed attitude, questioning why he had stopped so suddenly. David kept an unwavering composure, pointing to the red light and asking how she was doing. Maya is still upset, saying that she is being late and that the car belongs to her owner. When she asks for information about the insurance policy, David tries to avoid the paperwork. But she is adamant she needs to make a formal report so as not to jeopardize her job. Eventually, David relented and gave his information. They broke up with a mixture of tension and mutual curiosity. A few days later, Saron and Detective Lou met at a cafe to exchange information about the case. She emphasized the need for lie detectors, while Lou suspected that the insurance company was just looking for an excuse not to pay compensation. The conversation turned to a reflection on the psychology of the rich. Saron argues that wealthy people live in a constant fear of losing what they have, and, therefore, they desperately seek protection. She emphasized the assertion that the robbery had all the signs planned from within. Upon returning to headquarters, Lou analyzed the records of previous cases, discarding thefts and those with conflict scenes or clear biological evidence. What remains is a very specific pattern. Robberies targeting luxury goods carriers on Highway 101 were carried out cleanly, and no one was injured. He was convinced that he was facing a very cautious set of master snails. In a parallel development, Omen commits a robbery at another jewelry store. Unlike David, his method was terror. He burst in and shouted and demanded to take all the things in the safe. When he didn't get the immediate cooperation he wanted, he forced one of the employees to go out on the street to find the keys in a car. The employee fearfully complied under the threat of his life. Omen escapes with a mess of loot and a messy but valuable product. When Lou tries to present his theory about the serial robber and his superiors, Lieutenant Bien interrupts him abruptly. He ordered him to stop looking for contacts where they weren't, arguing that reopening old cases would hurt the department's crime statistics. Lou felt helpless when he saw that the bureaucracy was indirectly protecting the criminal. For his part, David decides to contact Maya under a fake name and ask her out. She agrees, and over dinner they joke about the accident that brought them together. David landed a career related to financial software development, a job that forced him to travel constantly. Maya confessed that she didn't feel comfortable in the fancy restaurant he had chosen. so they decided to go to a much simpler place to sell street food. There, the conversation flows more smoothly. She asks about his emotional past and his motivations. David is honest, and one of the things that motivates him is money. When the question was asked whether he would erase the past to start over, if given the chance, he replied yes, without a second of hesitation. On the contrary, Maya says that she won't do it, because even sad moments are part of who she is now. She told him about the career management of artists and how she found the ambitions of the rich never to be fulfilled. David assures him that he has a limit, a number that will give him the peace he seeks. At the end of the evening, they agreed to meet again. When he got home, David saw the news of the robbery in Santa Barbara. The reporter described an opponent wearing a motorcycle helmet who acted very ruthlessly. At the police station, Lusum recorded video footage of the incident. Although the location and target matched his suspect on Highway 101, the aggressive behavior did not match. He concluded that this was an early catcher or someone who had completely changed his way of acting. David is furious, confronting the man about allowing Ormond to do the job. The man downplayed it and warned that David's usefulness was coming to an end, obeying the new commands. Later, the owner of the jewelry Sammy was sent for further investigation, and this time, he was connected to a lie detector. The next day, Manny meets with Ormond and reveals secret details about David and his hacker. Dave had just told Ormond to keep an eye on them both, warning that David was planning another robbery. Manny's plan was to strike first and attack him first. Ormond agrees, begins to spy on Dave, and eventually locates David outside a restaurant. After the meeting, David gets information about Sarone's schedule. A few days later, David creates a situation to talk about cars with Sarone, as she loves them so much. That night, May stopped by David's house. After a brief conversation, they dance together, and the romantic tension between them grows. Later that night, David went outside to get some fresh air and found Ormond lurking nearby. Realizing his location has been exposed, he checks his car and discovers a tracking device underneath. A few days later, he packed up his belongings and moved to a new place. Ormond then approaches Devon, trying to persuade him to reveal details of David's next plan. Meanwhile, Detective Lou is informed of David's old escape car that was abandoned on Highway 101. When he saw the broken mirrors, Lou quickly realized that this was the car that had been involved in the robbery. Soon after, the investigation team arrived at the scene and began looking for clues. At an art exhibition where Sarone quickly sees David. He invited her to a nearby restaurant, and she agreed. During the conversation, David tells Sarone that he found her by no coincidence. He reveals his true identity, a thief who specializes in hunting for high-value items. He also told Sarone that she had worked for 11 years at the same company, clearly the best in her field, but they still hadn't let her become a partner. He said that she deserved more and that he could help her. Sarone immediately refused to engage in any illegal activities. Before leaving, David leaves her with one last and unusual instruction. If she changes her mind, post a photo of her feet on Instagram and he'll get in touch. Suddenly, David noticed Armand and immediately drove after him. After a long chase, Armand was unlucky and hit a car traveling in the opposite direction. David doesn't stop. He chases Armand to a nearby supermarket and asks him to tell him who he works for. When Armand is silent, David points a gun at him, warning that if he interferes with his plans again, he will be hunted down. In the face of the threat, Armand quickly recoils and agrees to stay out of David's path. The next day, Lou and his team receive a report of a robbery. As the scene unfolded, officers shot a fleeing suspect only to discover it was an unarmed boy. An officer then quietly placed a gun near him, apparently to justify the shooting. This angered Lou, but a higher-ranking colleague insisted that Lou keep his testimony like the other officers in order to cover up the misconduct. Lou reluctantly agreed to return to the company. Sharon shares shocking news. She took care of the insurance for Monroy's wedding. She also revealed that Monroy plans to donate $5 million in diamonds to her guests, with a diamond dealer handling the delivery and collecting the same amount of cash, all of which are out of the system for tax evasion. Later, Larry talks to Sharon, telling her that her promotion will have to wait until 5 years later due to the company's financial difficulties. Sharon pointed out that the company had a great year, and while Larry became a partner after 5 years, she has been with it for 11 years. In frustration, she threatened to take her clients with her and quit her job. Meanwhile, DNA from a hair found in David's abandoned car was analyzed. The trail led to a James name. However, the last record of him is from when he was 8 years old. After that, his identity seemed to disappear completely. Returning to Sharon, she went to the beach and posted a photo of her feet, giving the signal that David was waiting for. She then contacted him with a complete plan. A diamond dealer will arrive at Monroy's wedding with $5 $5 million in diamonds, and collect the same amount of cash, totaling $11 million. Sharon wants $3 million to do her part. David agreed, but asked to receive the full insurance record and all the details of the security guard in charge. On Lou's side, he goes to an orphanage trying to find information about his identity from DNA, but to no avail. That night, David received a call from his former orphanage. His guardian mentions that a detective is asking about a person named James. She gives the phone to Lou, who tells David that he wants to see him in person. David just picked up the phone in silence. Later, Sharon stayed in the office late and sent the security guard's file to David. When she got home, Orman was waiting for her. He grabbed her, asking to tell her what she and David were planning. Too scared, Sharon told her everything. The next day, Sharon met with Lou to explain the situation. Lou warns her that if she takes official measures, she will be the first to be arrested. He told her to shut up and let him take care of it, but he needed every detail she knew about David. 2 days later, Lou reviewed the evidence of the first robbery and quietly cut out the fake diamonds. At night, Maya meets David and Took F to reveal the truth about himself, but he refuses. Frustrated and tired of the secrets, she breaks up with him and leaves. The day of the robbery had come. David drives to the airport's parking lot, and, according to Saron, he blocks the security guard who threatens his family, leaving him with no choice but to cooperate. On the plane, David met the real diamond dealer and guided him. He left the airport as an agent. Lou disguises himself as another investor whom David is tasked with picking up. The two drive to the wedding venue together and have a brief conversation about David's childhood. Meanwhile, Saron loses his temper and confronts his boss, who is clearly manipulating the young girl who has just joined the company. Once in the hotel's penthouse, David and Lou arrive at the event and unexpectedly discover that Orman is already inside, working as a chef. David confronts Monroy and Adrian, pulls out a gun, and asks for cash and diamonds. Adrian went out to pay the money. David asks Lou to open the safe to retrieve the jewelry, but there is a gun inside. Lou grabs it, points it at David, and reveals that he is a police officer. At that moment, Orman burst into the apartment. Orman wields his gun at everyone, and unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse when Orman shoots Monroy. He wants to get the diamonds while asking Lou to let go of the gun. Again, David gets a gun and takes Orman's life, thereby saving Lou's life. Quickly, Lou tells David to leave everything behind and leave quietly, insisting that he will put all the blame on Orman, and ending the case by identifying him as the thief on Highway 101. David left the diamonds and cash behind before leaving. Monroy was both angry and injured, threatening to report everything to the authorities. Lou calmly pointed out that reporting to the police would expose the $5 million undercover deal, the diamonds could be confiscated, and Monroy could face serious legal charges. A few days later, Lou was seen on a bus carrying real diamonds. He decides to visit Sauron and gives her a few diamonds obtained from the scene, believing that she really deserves them. Lou then drove to a location where a new car was waiting. It was a silent thank you for letting David escape. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Maya was in the office when a letter arrived. Inside is a childhood photo of David, revealing that he grew up in a foster home with nothing, along with a simple message asking for one more chance. Maya can't help but smile as she goes looking for David. The movie here is the end. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting movies.